Good evening and welcome to the February 21, 2024 regular meeting of the Holland City Council. I'm Mayor Nathan Box and I'm calling this meeting to order. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Byrd. Here. Freeman.
Here.
Raymond. Here. Corbin. Here. Soul.
Here.
Rowan.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Schultheis. And Mayor Box.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. We're going to begin this evening as we have for many years, first with an opening prayer this evening by Councilmember Soul, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we would invite you to join us if you're so inclined.
Higher power, thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you that we can come together and do your work. We thank you for the sunshine and that spring is just right around the corner. We ask for your wisdom and guidance, that we could do your work here and serve our constituents to the best of our abilities. We thank you for those that are here tonight and all that you do and leading us and guiding us. In your name we pray. Namaste.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilmember Soul. Next item on the agenda are our consent agenda items. These are items that are considered to be fairly routine and have been reviewed by council members as part of our council packet, and they will be enacted in one motion unless a member of the public or a member of council asks to have an item removed from the consent agenda, and then it will be placed in its regular order on the regular agenda. But before we do that, Brenda, would you please review the consent agenda for us?
Yes. 4A, absence is excused for Councilmember Byrd and Councilmember Schultheis. 4B, approval of minutes, February 7, 2024 regular meeting. 4D, written petitions and communications, a tax abatement, PA 198 for El Perigo Company, 770 Interchange Drive. 4E, from Holland Board of Public Works, the HBPW Broadband Services Terms of Service Update. 4F, from Holland Board of Public Works, budget amendment for fiscal year 2024 electric distribution capital budget. 4G, from Holland Board of Public Works, East 32nd Street water main replacement contract. 4H, City Clerk Board of Review set hours and salary for 2024, adopt a resolution. 4I, City Clerk, the 2024 Tulip Time fireworks request. 4J, from Finance, accept the Community Forestry Grant. 4K, from Finance, purchasing, declare items as surplus for police operations, the bicycles. And 4L, Management and Administrative Services, the Board of Review appointment of city officers.
Great, thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed in its regular order on the regular agenda? Seeing none. Any member of council that would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none there either. What is the pleasure of council in regard to the consent agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support? Support by Rowan. Any discussion? Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Vreeman.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Corbin.
Yes.
Soul.
Yes.
Rowan.
Yes.
Shea.
Yes.
And Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act of the State of Michigan, we provide the opportunity for the public to speak not only at our regular council meetings and our study sessions, but all of our board, committee, and commission meetings. It's an opportunity for the public to communicate with the leadership in regard to decision making. We do have guidelines that we ask you to follow. One is that each person may be allowed to speak just one time during the meeting, and your time is limited to 5 minutes. There are 3 lights on the dais in front of me to help you with that. There's a green light, which means you're doing well on time, yellow light, which means you have 1 minute left, and the red light means your time has expired, and we are strict about that. When you approach the microphone, please first speak into the microphone because we have people who are watching at home who would like to hear what it is that you have to say. Please state your name and the municipality in which you live, and please direct your comments to the City Council. We do not answer questions during this time or engage in discussion. This is one-way communication. It's an opportunity for you to speak to us. So having said that, is there anyone here who would like to address council at this time? If so, please come forward. And would you please state your name and municipality for the record?
Good evening. I'm Catherine Ristela Bass from the City of Holland, live in the City of Holland, and I'm here representing the Human Relations Commission. I'm the chair of the commission this year, and I wanted to give our commission's appreciation to the council and to BPW for the fiber project. As I was watching the meeting last week, I was so pleased to see this step towards even more equity of access in the City of Holland, and why it's such a great place to live here, that giving these options to people so they're not tied exclusively to private sales. Those are fine, but we like this public sale very much. I also very much enjoyed Mr. Bird's précis of the life of the Black inventor, I can't remember her last name, the woman who did the ophthalmology. So thank you again for all your service, and we are also very glad to have Devin Shea join us as the new council member at our meetings. Thank you all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and municipality for the record?
Ann Henriksen, Zeeland. I'm going to continue celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King for Black History Month. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's sermon to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, Montgomery, Alabama, 1957. Reverend Dr. King made history by putting God first. Keep in mind that these words are meant for the people of color who had and have been devalued and forced into discrimination beyond our comprehension and admission. These people, once slaves to the concepts of men, were prepared with the power of God for a tactical mission that would be painful and humiliating, because they were about to execute in a godly courage to defy the attitudes, laws, and injustices of this country. How? Peacefully and unwaveringly. We fall short in our thinking when we elevate Dr. King to just a famous civil rights leader alone, as we defame him, as we include human behavior and desires as rights that have no part of the gospel of the good news that he preached. Without this gospel, the civil rights movement of today will be silenced by hate. Let me begin. Love Your Enemies was the title of his sermon. He said, Jesus is not a dreamer. This command is an absolute necessity for the survival of our civilization. He realized it is painfully difficult, but he assures us the Holy Spirit will provide the way even in the darkest of times. First, democracy. You have never touched it because one class of people oppresses another in man-made power to get personal gain. And this is what Jesus says. How is it that you can see the mote in your brother's eyes and not see the beam in your own eye? So you begin to love your enemies and love persons who hate you, whether in collective life or individual life, by looking at yourself. Secondly, how must you seek to love your enemy is to deliberately discover the element of good in your enemy. And every time you begin to hate that person, realize that there is some good there, and look at what is good, which is done, if done diligently, will overbalance the bad and what you hate in them. Thirdly, another way that you love your enemy is this. When an opportunity presents itself for you to defeat your enemy, that is the time when the person who hates you the most, the person who misuses you the most or gossips about you and gets others to do the same, There may become a time in the future that you may have an opportunity to defeat that person. That is the time you must not. Love is creative understanding, goodwill for all men. When you rise to the level of love, it is the great beauty and power you seek only to defeat evil systems. Individuals who happen to be caught up in that system, those individuals you love. But you seek to defeat the evil systems. There's another reason why you should love your enemies, and that is because hate distorts the personality of the hater. We usually think of what hate does for an individual hated or an individual's hated, but it is even more tragic. It is even more ruinous to the individual who hates. You just begin hating somebody, and you will begin to do irrational things. You can't see straight when you hate. You can't walk straight when you hate. You can't stand upright when you hate. Your vision is distorted. There's nothing more tragic than to see an individual whose heart is filled with hate. He comes to the point that he becomes a pathological case. For that reason, for that person who hates, you can stand up and see a person, and that person can be beautiful, but you will begin to call them ugly. For that person who hates, the beautiful becomes ugly, and the ugly becomes beautiful. For the person who hates, the good becomes bad, and the bad becomes good. For the person who hates, the true becomes false, and the false becomes true. That's what hate does. You can't see right. The symbol of objectivity is lost. Hate destroys the very structure of the personality of the hater. And Dr. King went on, this is a long, long
Mr. Mayor, that is
message.
5 minutes.
I'm sorry, your time has expired.
I will continue.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next item on our agenda, written petitions and communications. In addition to providing an opportunity during our meetings for people to address us in person, we do also have an email address that you can send. Those emails are collected in between our council meetings and are accepted into the record. As the same is true with our our opportunity for public comment, occasionally questions arise that staff has the opportunity to be able to address. And if those at home have read the email that was received this week, there are a certain number of questions. And just for clarification, it's under my understanding that staff has already reached out and has addressed some of those issues. But at this point, I would ask the council what they would like to do in regard to the public comment that was received. Would they like to accept it into the record?
Yes. Let's, I move to accept them into the record.
Moved by Sol. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Raymond. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, item number 10, adoption of ordinances, Planning Commission, text amendments to Chapter 39 Unified Development Ordinance. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, those watching at home. Steve Peterson, we're all familiar with and thankful works for us as our senior planner. And he has text amendments to our Unified Development Ordinance that my understanding is outlined in the report was passed unanimously by Planning Commission, has already been before you for first reading. So Steve's going to go through those, and then this would be your opportunity to take action on this evening.
Thank you, Keith. Half of the job's already done now, so. I do just have some quick slides here to go over. So these are just some, a few minor amendments, and maybe one that's a little bit more substantial, but it's pretty brief tonight. So this first one in regards to outdoor storage and processing, again, in kind of the theme with Udo of making things easy to use, reader-friendly, we wanted to simply add in here where other sections of the code where you will find those screening regulations. So since it's pointing you in that direction, we wanted to make it really easy and add that into this section. The second one is for parking lots as a principal use. So we recently had one of these which is why we found this for the setback purposes of parking lots as a principal use. You can see it was pointing you 9.02, and it should be C3. So again, just sort of an error there that we wanted to make sure it's pointing you, pointing the reader in the right spot. Our lighting regulations. So right now, you can see that the section applicability, there are lighting regs apply to those properties that have gone through site plan approval. So we think it would be more appropriate to have that apply to really essentially all of the properties. You can see we're still accepting out the residential uses. But we recently had a situation where somebody had asked about putting up a searchlight in a commercial property. They hadn't gone through site plan approval. That is actually one of the prohibited lights that we have, but with that applicability section only applying to projects that went through site plan approval, it wouldn't have applied to them. So we thought we would clean this section up a little bit by making sure that it wasn't just for projects that are going through site plan approval. Site plan approval extension. So right now, if you go through the process of getting a site plan approved, you have 18 months to act on that. If you need a little bit longer time, you can come back and ask for a 1-year extension. And the way that the current language is written, you have to come back to the Planning Commission, which is normal, but we also allow folks to go through what we call the administrative site plan approval process, which is really a staff level review. So for those types of projects, we think amending this section to get your extension from the same approving authority that approved the site plan would be appropriate. So an admin project wouldn't have to circle back to the Planning Commission for their extension, especially since the Planning Commission would have never seen the project. We wanted to allow them to do that with the same approving authority. So again, kind of with the theme of Udo of making things efficient process. The non-conforming section. So this is the one that probably is a little bit more substantial, maybe just in the sense that there's a lot of, redlining and underlining going on here, but the amendments themselves are pretty simple here. So this first one, 1303, for the expansions, this was a recent Board of Appeals case that there was a little bit of, I don't want to say confusion, but there was a little bit of concern on the Board of Appeals about the wording of this language. So working with the city attorney, we wanted to try to clean this up a little bit, just to make sure it was a little bit more clear so these are the projects if your non-conforming deck is too close to the property line, that you simply couldn't expand that just because your existing setback is already too close. You couldn't just simply expand that by right. You would have to go to the Board of Appeals. Wanted to make sure that that was clear. That was the attempt with the original language as well, but again, with some of that work at the Board of Appeals, we were trying to clean that up a little bit. The second set of amendments with the non-conforming section in regards to the zoning administrator repairs that are now going to be done by the zoning administrator rather than having to go to the Board of Appeals. Again, I guess I put that in that section of making things a little bit more user-friendly in Udo. So right now, if you need to get this determination, this is helpful in the situations where if you have bought a non-conforming structure, you need to get some financing. A lender will typically need some sort of letter that, hey, could I rebuild that structure? Well, rather than have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get that kind of determination, to let staff do that. And then if somebody is unhappy with that decision, you can always appeal that to the Board of Appeals. And then one of the additions with those changes was to essentially have them act on that within a short period of time. So there's some language in here that says they have to get their permits within a year and occupancy within 2 years. Again, with the idea that you're we wanting somebody to act on that decision, a little bit like the site plan process that we already talked about. And then finally, we wanted to clarify our definition of yards. So this came up as a result of, and I have a graphic in here if this is helpful. So this is just a graphic of Waverly and 16th Street. So in situations where we have properties that are described to the center of the road, what I refer to as a meets and bounds parcel rather than maybe a platted lot. So you kind of see the difference here. The property on the east side of Waverly is described out to the center of the road. The property 675 on the west side there is described to the right-of-way. So we want to make sure as people are measuring for setback purposes, for things like signage, let's use, that if they use it from the property line that was described from the center of the road, you know, they'd be putting something potentially in the road right-of-way. We want to make sure it's clear in those definitions that for those types of properties that the public right-of-way is exempted from that definition of yard, so that we would be taking that setback from the road right-of-way, which is how those platted lots, for instance, at 675, are already described. So we would be doing that the same with all of our properties, so there isn't any confusion about where we're taking those setbacks from. That's our set of amendments, as Keith mentioned, that the Planning Commission has reviewed and has recommended unanimously that you adopt as well.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for staff? Mr. Corbin?
Yeah, just a point of clarity regarding site plan approval extension. That means if there's any changes, though, it still has to come back to the Planning Commission, correct? So any changes,
Yeah, so either to Planning Commission or through the admin approval process. So these are just the approvals that they were just getting an extension for the exact plan that's already been approved.
yeah, but if the site plan happens to change, or that still has to come back to the Planning Commission,
Yeah, and I
correct?
suppose there would be a little bit of leeway in there. I mean, depending on what exactly, any kind of substantial change, yes. I suppose there would be some allowances in there if it was a small enough change that could already have been approved by staff, that would be possible. But those would be very, very
Yeah,
minor.
I'm just looking at, when I was on the Planning Commission, there was always some things about lighting and a variety of things that came up as an issue before approving the site plan. Fencing, bushes, shrubbery. And I can see where staff might think it might be small, whereas the commission might think it's important. And so I guess I would suggest that if there's any changes, that it should go back to the site plan itself, that it should go back to the commission as a whole. And I don't see any language in here that says it has to, it says that you guys can approve it up to a year, right? You can, but it
That
doesn't
the
have
extension would be good for a year.
Yeah, good for a year, and you can approve that, but it doesn't really say that if there's a change to the site plan that has to go back to the commission. I don't see any reference to that.
Well, the attempt was to allow for, again, the same approving authority to do the extension rather than have to circle back to the Planning Commission. So they, in those cases that were approved from an administrative site plan process, the Planning Commission wouldn't have seen it that first time. It would have been approved by staff. And so I guess I was just trying to be careful of making sure to set the expectation that if there's already the ability to approve some sort of change, again, being very minor, that would be the same standard that we already have in our code. If there had been changes to our code, for instance, that were significant, those would be reasons why maybe we wouldn't want to do the extension, and that they would have to reapply and start from scratch.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yeah.
ask for
Certainly.
clarification on the question? The proposed amendment applies to the expiration of an approved plan, and it looks like the language just says whoever approved it, whatever authority that was, whether it's planning commission or administrative, it would go back to them for a renewal of something. But amendment, Section H, it does not deal with amendments, so I didn't know if that would help. that language is not,
Yeah,
In-
and that's what I'm suggesting. is
Okay,
that-
so-
if
but
there's
it's not-
Yeah,
yeah.
so if, let's say we've done the 18 months and now they're coming back for an extension, but there's, they want to do some changes to it because it's been 18 months, right? I can envision that someone says, well, we'd like to change this, and can we get an administrative approval for an extension for a year as well as we're making these changes to the site plan? To me, I don't know, I'm comfortable with saying a site plan that needs changes that were approved by the body of the planning commission.
Yeah,
I don't see the
but
language
it's a,
supporting that.
but that's a separate issue. This is only talking about the extension of an unchanged
That's-
site plan.
That's the clarity I was wanting, okay.
Yeah,
That-
there,
that is
there are
correct.
other sections that deal with if somebody's making an amendment, how those approvals have to go through.
Thank you.
This is just the change, this is just the extension
That's
of
good.
one that has not changed.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for staff? Great. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Yep.
What is the pleasure of council in regard to the text amendments to Chapter 39 of the Unified Development Ordinance?
Move to accept as presented.
Moved by Rowan. Is there support?
Second.
Oh, was that you?
That was
Mr.
me.
Shea, thank you. It caught me off guard down there. Any discussion? I just wanted to thank staff and planning commission. I know that we've had a number of these that have come through as we use a document that is as expansive and new as this. I was very aware of the fact that it was little things like references. Oh, we got that reference number. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of those references throughout the document. That as we use this, we're starting to find those things or those little bits that need additional clarity. So I appreciate that. Kathy, would you please? I knew I was going to do it. Brenda, I am so sorry. Would you please call the roll?
Okay. Let's see here. We're up to Raymond.
Yes.
Corbin. Rowan.
Yes.
Shea.
Yes.
Freeman.
Yes.
And Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Brenda. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, item 12E 4.1, adopt a resolution to amend Crescent Shores LLC, WSF 2015 LLC, and Uptown Development LLC brownfield plans authorizing tax increment financing, known around here as TIFs, for local brownfield revolving funds. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Mark Myers is going to come up momentarily, and there's been a transition with his taking on economic development. So Lynn is also here, kind of lived this for the last several years. But this is as much about talking about 3 specific recommended amendments that we're making, but probably more importantly, just a reminder of what we think is a really important economic development tool. So I asked Mark to focus not only on the items in front of you tonight, but really kind of take a step back and remind all of us about what the local brownfield revolving fund is and why we created it. So welcome, Mark.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge Finance Director Lynn McCammon for doing the heavy lifting on this. I get to present and take all the glory, but she did all the work, also with Special Legal Counsel Jared Belka. So tonight, staff is recommending that City Council authorize tax capture for 3 existing brownfields to be placed in a revolving fund to assist in raising capital for future projects. And also, you'll note that the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority Board approved the amendments earlier this month. Going back and talking about the tool, the Brownfield Act allows that tax capture can be placed in a local revolving fund for an additional 5 years in a brownfield plan. All of the eligible expenses for the projects have to be reimbursed before that can occur. The tool really has only been in place since 2020. City Council approved a local revolving fund in 2020, and the policy is attached to your packet. But prior to that, historically, the city didn't take advantage of that tool. So that's why we're looking at these older brownfield plans and taking advantage of the tool before they expire. Once they expire, we can't take advantage of it. So we've got these three current plans. They're towards the end of their terms. And again, we want to take advantage of this tool. One of the advantages to the tax capture is we can leverage other taxing jurisdictions' millage to raise additional capital. Also, if we didn't take advantage of this tool, we'd have to look at other means such as budgeting in the Municipal Capital Improvement Fund. And we do have some large projects coming up. Waterfront Holland was mentioned in the item. That is a very capital-intensive project, and just one example of where this tool could be used. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Any questions for staff? I've just got a couple. I'm looking at the numbers, and just for the public's knowledge, what kind of dollars are we talking about here?
Well, Lynn told me earlier that the current balance in the fund that was established 4 years ago is $900,000. Amending these plans would add approximately $2.1 million by 2029.
So by doing this, we've got the opportunity to collect or capture over $2 million of money that if we didn't do this would just go wanting.
Correct.
All right.
And we'd have to find it elsewhere in the city budget or by other means.
Right. Any other questions for staff? Great. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 12E 4.1?
Motion approved.
Moved by Corbin. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Sol. Any discussion? Seeing none. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Corbin. Yes. Sol.
Yes.
Rowan.
Yeah.
Shay.
Yes.
Freeman.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 13, communications from the city manager. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I do have 7 things, and I'm not joking, but they'll go fast, I promise. So first, just a reminder, immediately after this meeting, we'll kind of take a 10-minute break / movement, and we'll head up and we'll have what I think is probably a relatively brief study session, but we'll have that upstairs in the training room. For now, we're looking at also having study session items next week. I would say there's a better than 50-50 chance that we will be to the point where we are going to invite the firm or the partner of firms that we're negotiating currently after doing RFP interviews with an interview committee to take a look at the management of the Civic Center. So not 100% sure that will be there, but I'll have to make that decision by Friday, and that will be in the packet, naming that firm and setting that forward. And again, that will be only a presentation by that firm and some information from staff. Obviously, you can't make any decisions next week at study session anyway. We were requested, and we're very happy also we'll be welcoming the superintendent of Highland Public Schools that just wants to kind of make a presentation on the state of the school system. And then barring, unless we think there's kind of too much on that agenda, which I think will be okay, our HR director, Jennifer Orm, will also be walking through and doing a presentation on all of your Colbys, which I think will be a interesting and productive conversation. We are very busy currently across the departments, and especially in finance, with budget prep, and also Mallory certainly helping me with strategic and business plan prep and the outcomes from your retreat. We have an exciting day tomorrow. Matt Van Dyken, we were talking about how long we've been working towards this, but we are opening the bids on the ice skating park tomorrow. So that involves like 3 days worth of detailed reviews next week. So we'll be working on those and certainly have the results of those to you at an upcoming meeting. Also, just because I get asked a lot, I would say that we're making solid progress on two very large projects right now. Both LG, working on various agreements, but really, quite frankly, waiting for different things for them to submit for us to move forward. I don't have a timeline on that, just waiting until the information is ready. And we also are working on Waterfront Holland and the land, everyone calls it the land swap possibility also. And I like to remind people, they're like, the expectation always was that was going to take quite a long time to pull everything together, but we're not wasting time on that. We are consistently working on that, so hopefully we'll have something for you also in I won't say the near future, because then you want me to put a timeline on it, and I don't have a timeline. I will remind you also, if you get questions, I did confirm with the Frost Center at Hope College that they are in active process of doing the phone calls to citizens for our citizen survey. So I think they were feeling like they were approaching 50% on that. So I would expect that to be completed. But just in case you hear that out in the community, yes, that is a legitimate process that we're doing, that Frost Center is doing on behalf of the city. And then finally, I think you saw Connie Locker in the crowd earlier. She left. There was an item on the consent agenda. And just periodically, we like to point out kind of how that grant manager position is doing, and specifically how Connie's doing, and a report to Lynn in the finance department. And since April 2022, the finance department has directly requested over $14.9 million in grant funds, and has had $1.5 million awarded. I think that did not at that point include what you approved tonight. Additionally, the finance department has provided support to grant and funding applications led by other departments in the BPW, and those requests total over $10.9 million. So we want to continue to take a look at the performance of that position, but have continually felt that that was a good investment that we made with our ARPA funds, and are very pleased when we're able to secure grants. And that is all I have tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda, appointments and communications from the mayor. I do have an appointment this evening. I would ask that the council please approve the appointment of Vince Boilo to the Planning Commission for a partial term, said partial term expiring June 30, 2024. Mr. Boilo will replace Jeff Genova, who became ineligible to serve in his capacity on the Planning Commission upon his hiring into the City of Holland on December 26 of 2023. Just as a little background, Mr. Boilo was a visitor at our last Planning Commission meeting. It was great to have a conversation with him about that, and I think that he's excited to join that team. So I would ask that's requesting a motion from council to approve that appointment.
Move to approve.
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Raymond. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, I get to do that on a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Kathy wasn't even here to take the roll calls. I'm going to get that right eventually, Brenda. I apologize. Next item on the agenda, 15, appointments, motions, and communications from council members. Mr. Corbin, I believe you have something this evening.
Yes, it is recommended the city council accept the correction of an appointment of Scott Vanderswag rather than Kurt Vanderswag to the Sustainability Materials Task Force, term to expire November 1st, 2025. So put that in a motion.
And what is the pleasure of council in regard to that request?
Move to approve.
It is moved by Shea. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Soul. Any discussion?
Our extreme apologies to Mr. Vanderswag for that mistake.
It's nice to know I'm not the only one that messes up on people's names
Yeah,
occasionally.
that's
It
true.
is. It is. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other appointments, motions, communications from council members this evening? Ms. Soul?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Devin. So I just wanted to acknowledge a refresh program at United Methodist Church They celebrated 5 years, and if you're not familiar with them, Refresh Hygiene is a program for unsheltered people that partner with Community Action House, and they provide a mail service, a place that people without housing can shower and get clean clothes, grab breakfast. And then they also have many of the resources within the community come to the church so that they can, maybe get an ID or connect with different resources in the community to prevent those, or if they have those barriers. So I just wanted to say it's all possible with all the volunteers that make it happen and all the collaboration in the community. So wanted to say happy birthday, happy 5th birthday, and may they keep doing the good work, and they're always looking for volunteers and donations. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Shea?
Yeah, first off, echoed that Refresh, visited a couple times, and it's the coolest thing that goes on. I also visited Kids Food Basket today. Everybody go there and help out. That's a cool spot. I just wanted to say the International Relations Commission has released the date for the International Festival for September 14th this year. That is an awesome festival. If you've been, I don't need to convince you, but it is super, super awesome. So September 14th, I'll be talking about it a lot, I'm sure, as we go. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other motions, communications from council members? Mr. Corbin?
So the investment we made in our grants section, wow, 12.4 million is the number I'm coming up with. That's wonderful. Whether it's supportive of another portion of the city or just direct applications, just wonderful work. Pass on to the staff. Thank you very much.
Any other motions, communications from council members? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Vreeman, is there support?
Support.
Support by Sol. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. As a reminder, we do have a study session that will begin in approximately 10 minutes upstairs in the training room on the second floor.